RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel joining us now. Ronna, good to have you here. Thank you very much. Your reaction to no majority emerging in the first House for the Speaker vote for Kevin McCarthy.
Well, I look at the contrast with the Democrats who very clearly are going to elect Hakeem Jeffries. And I think the number one thing I always hear on the road is, why do Democrats always seem to stick together and Republicans don't? And the American people want us to take the reins of the House. We just retired Nancy Pelosi. It was done in large part because of Kevin McCarthy and his work. And I think any delay is a delay in getting the business and the work done of the American people. I don't see policy differences that are dividing these votes right now. Kevin wants to tackle the border. He wants to get rid of the 87,000 IRS agents. So I think as the votes continue, he's going to continue to bring members his way, I hope. He is the one who retired Nancy Pelosi. He was the minority leader. He switched it so that we can have a Republican speaker. And you see broad support for him. The vast majority of members support Kevin.
Ronna, you know, we see up there that 12 people have voted others. And if I could just bring up the graphic on the screen, we as of this morning, had 14 Republicans who were either firmly opposed to Kevin McCarthy as Speaker or were certainly leaning in that direction. Can we bring that graphic up? Is that possible? So we can get a look at, there's the 14 who were either skeptical of or outright opposed to Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Congressman Dan Crenshaw was on Fox and Friends this morning, and he said that doing what they're doing plays right into the Democrats' hands. Listen to how he put it here.
If I didn't know any better, it's like the Democrats paid these people off. Hey, let's pay them off. Let's make it look like the Republicans can't govern and don't deserve any gavels whatsoever. That's what it makes it look like. Again, their demands are foolish. Their demands are inside baseball procedural issues.
So speak to that, if you would, Ronna, as we go back to the vote count here with 127 for McCarthy, 120 for Jeffries, 12 voting for Jim Jordan, Andy Biggs, and other folks. The opponents of McCarthy really can't even articulate what it is that they want here. And in doing this, what are they doing to the Republican Party?
Well, I'm in Michigan right now, and I was just talking to somebody who said, this makes the party look bad. We just elected Republicans to take over the House, and why can't you guys unify? And it's division for division's sake. I'm not seeing a policy separation. Kevin is certainly not a moderate. He is somebody who has tackled the border, who has tackled big issues. He also raised the money and recruited many of the candidates that were just elected, not just in 2022, but also in 2020. So I will say this. We have a big task ahead of us in 2024 to take back the White House. The Senate map gets infinitely better, and we have to keep the House. And every day that we are delaying the agenda that the American people elected Republicans to govern with is a day that we are not getting the work done of the American people. And it's 5, it's 10. The vast majority of the members support Kevin. These 10 who don't, I hope they come around, because we have to unify. We have to unify. I think this is the biggest message coming out of this midterm. If you look at all the split tickets, if you look at states where Republicans refuse to vote for other Republicans, in a large part, that's why we didn't get the wins that we wanted in this election, because of Republican on Republican infighting, and it is carrying into this Speaker election, and I think it's something that's disheartening and is not bringing people to our party. We need to show a vision of positivity and an agenda of getting things done for the American people if we're going to continue to get elected in these next elections, and we need to elect a speaker.
Ronna, hardline members of the House Freedom Caucus, as we have seen in recent days, have indicated over the last few days that after this first vote, which is going to conclude shortly, that they would nominate a new candidate around who they hoped Republicans could support. Can you add any color to that on what we should know?
Yeah, I don't know who that would be, Sandra. I mean, the reality is Kevin has a huge group of Republican Congress people who support him, who are not going to move. They are not going to go for any other candidate. So when he's at, over 200 votes for him, and there's maybe 10 or 12 that are differing, the majority are going to stick with Kevin, and I don't think they're budging. So this could go into multiple votes. And why are they with Kevin? Because he was the one traveling the country. He was the one raising millions and millions of dollars. He is the one that just secured a Republican majority in the House. I think a lot of us did that together, but he is the one who did the work. And I think a lot of these members are very, very, very loyal to him, on top of the fact that he's going to be a bold leader as Speaker, and he is going to do the things that Republican voters want Republican leadership to do.
You know, Rod, I mentioned a moment ago that a lot of these opponents of Kevin McCarthy can't really articulate what they want. You know, we had on Fox and Friends this morning one of the opponents of McCarthy who just basically said we can't keep doing things the way that we've been doing them without pointing to specific details. They do have some demands. One of the demands is that they want the threshold to, quote, vacate the chair, that is to bring to a vote changing the speaker, to a threshold of one member of Congress. McCarthy offered 5, down from 50% of the caucus. I mean, when you take a look at demands like that, do they seem reasonable to you, or is this, as Dan Crenshaw put it this morning, just an exercise in self-aggrandizement?
Well, I agree with Dan. This is not something that the American people care about right now. I mean, we are still dealing with our kids having deficits after the pandemic. We have a border crisis. We have recessions, a recession looming. We have massive layoffs happening across the country, and we still have an energy issue with gas prices being high. The people in the country right now are looking at this and saying, what is going on? Why can't this party get it together and unify so that we can hold Biden accountable? Remember, Republicans, we have so much more in common than what divides us right now. And if we can't come together and take on the Biden administration, the people who elected us are being let down. And that is what they are seeing right now because of these holdouts who are refusing to elect a Speaker of the House for the first time in 100 years. I think we need to come together. We need to unify. We need to unify in our opposition to the Democrats. But right now, this is not helping our party.
Ronna, to go back to my last question about who could emerge here in the coming days, referencing the House Freedom Caucus indicating that they would nominate a new candidate, are you right now rejecting the idea that anyone other than McCarthy can lead Republicans in this new Congress?
I just don't see movement from the McCarthy camp. I don't see many members who are going to abandon Kevin, just like these 5 holdouts or the 5 who are saying we won't vote for Kevin. There's a lot more people who are saying it's got to only be Kevin. So I just don't see any movement there right now. Obviously, this will go into multiple votes. But everybody needs to remember the American people just retired Nancy Pelosi and elected Republicans to lead the House of Representatives. And every day we are delaying, we are letting down those voters. And this is what we need to be focused on, the voters and the people who just retired Nancy Pelosi and put Republicans in charge.
So, Ronna, the fact that the vote is going the way it is would seem to be an indication that this is not a vote for somebody else. This is a vote against McCarthy. And that if McCarthy were to continue to stay in the race, he's never going to make it to Speaker. You know, Chad Perkin was talking about going back to examples of 1849 and 1856 to describe where we are here in 2023. Is there a potential consensus candidate out there, a Steve Scalise, a Lee Zeldin, somebody like that, who could get the votes necessary to become Speaker?
Well, I've been getting a history lesson watching your show and listening. I didn't know about the 1856, that vote that lowered the threshold. I think we're in for a long run. I really don't see many of these members because I've been with them. I campaigned with Kevin. You look at candidates like Juan Ciscomani, or you look at Wesley Hunt, or you look at these candidates that Kevin recruited and got over the finish line. Look at California. Duarte, Young Kim, Michelle Steele, Ken Calvert, Mike Garcia. I mean, these are pickups that we got under Kevin McCarthy's leadership. I don't think many of them are going to budge. So I know we're focused on these holdouts against Kevin, but the vast majority of members are strongly supporting Kevin.
Right,
so I think we're in for a lot of votes.
But it is the holdouts that are preventing him from becoming Speaker, not the people who are supporting him. And if they don't change, he's toast.
I'm hopeful that they will change. I am hopeful that they will listen to the American people who said, we wanted a Republican Speaker. Please give us that. Find a way to repair your differences. Find whatever division that you have and solve it. And let's unite and remember what we're here to do, which is take on the Biden administration and work on the behalf of the American people.
Well, who's going to do that, Ronna? Who's going to unite the party? I mean, why is your party at this point today?
You know, I think it is. I think the vast majority of the party is united. I mean, you're seeing these few holdouts. So I think Kevin's going to continue to have discussions. He's going to work with these members. And I think you're going to see other members like Jim Jordan and others continue to talk to these other members and say, let's come together, because right now we need the American public to know that we can govern. And as you have multiple votes, I think you're going to see more and more people come over. But I'm hopeful that that happens. I think that's what should happen. And I know that's what the voters want. They want us to start governing.
So Ronald, let me just finish off here by pointing out that this is not a new problem in the Republican Party when they have control of Congress. There were years past, in the not too distant past, where bills were brought to the floor by Boehner, I recall, that failed. And you know, the Nancy Pelosi rule was you never bring a bill to the floor unless you know you've got the votes to pass it. So this is something that didn't just happen. This has been going on for years. And whereas at the same time, you've got the Democrats, as you pointed out, operating in lockstep with each other, not just in the House, but the House together with the Senate. Pelosi and Schumer were always on the same page. And until Republicans start to function like that, can you ever expect to effectively govern?
No, I think we have to start working together. I mean, I look at states like Arizona right now. I mean, look at Arizona. The top vote getter in the whole state was a Republican. She got 1,375,000 votes. And the other Republicans that were running in that state, you know who didn't vote for them? Republicans. So if we're so hateful towards each other that other Republicans won't vote for us, then we're doing exactly what the Democrats want, right? And so this scorched earth, I'm going to take on every other Republican, instead of focusing on who voters want us to focus on, which is the Democrats. Remember, the Democrats who are leaving our border open. They're the ones who kept our kids out of school. They're the ones who have allowed crime to run rampant in our streets. That is the Democrat Party. So as long as we're fighting each other, we are not keeping our eye on the prize. And I think we have to get the speakership settled, and we have to go forward if we're going to be successful in 2024 as a united party. And right now, this exemplifies exactly what the Democrats want to see from our party.
Ronna McDaniel joining us during the live breaking news that we are covering on Capitol Hill at this hour. Ronna, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.